Thank you so much, and sorry for being late. I just had not the right time. So maybe the Internet of Things can help for that, but so far not sure. So thank you for the introduction. Yes, my name is Laurent Ellerbach. As you can guess from my accent, yes, I'm French. And I'm working for Microsoft for a very long time, like for 20 years, even more. Imagine that I arrived when Office 97 was just launched, so very long time ago. I am both an engineer and a marketing person. I've actually a master degree in both dimensions. I've always been working in the middle of technologies. And I'm living between Paris and Moscow. My wife is from Moscow and she's Russian. And no, I don't speak Russian. But not enough for the conference, clearly, so we'll do it in English. I have 2 kids as well. And I'm a big fan of cheese and wine. And wine, just keep that in mind for the last part of the presentation. And I have a garden as well, as we've seen in the picture. And I will use the garden a lot today. First, I like to start with a couple of definitions with Internet of Things. I really like this one from Gartner. It's not a new one, and somehow Internet of Things is not very new neither. It's a network of physical objects, so we will see a couple of objects contain embedded technology, so usually things you don't really see, but why not? I mean, why not seeing those technology to communicate? So there is really a part of communication and interaction with the environment. And the external environment and the state of environment, and this is very important because it does create like the full chain. You have object, they communicate, and from the subject and the communication you have an interaction and somehow a loop back because it has an impact then back on their own state or environment. The Internet of Things is not really a revolution. I mean, anyone in the embedded technologies for years is like, yeah, it's embedded technology. Yeah, it's communicating. So what's new? Well, what's new really is more like it's a business revolution enabled by the technology. Because today, what has changed is really the price of the devices. If you've done embedded things like 10 years ago, clearly not, those powerful chip connected everywhere for like few cents. That was not existing. It already cost like hundreds of euros or dollars or whatever other currency you want, plus the capacity to store and do the analysis. So actually, it really helped the business to drive a revolution, and that's what is interesting. So today, we look at as well from a developer perspective, and we'll slice the project into a few buckets. A bit like in actually the Gartner definition. You have the device part, that's very obvious. We'll see a couple of examples and discussions in there. The cloud infrastructure, the data, and the inside parts. And we'll use actually my garden as an example for that. It's actually things I really have in production. I wanted to do a couple of demos, so I won't really do the demos, but I can show it right after because with the online it's not going to work pretty correctly. In a simple way, if you want to look at an architecture of an Internet of Things, you can have something like that. You have like a cloud part or a data part or whatever. There, I mean, something kind of hidden with a lot of services. You have more on the device part and another part to consume the data, usually. And that's how you can slice it. I've put a couple of names of actors everywhere of operating systems. And the way you can look at the data part and the way it does connect is a bit like if you have an alarm at home. If you have an alarm at home, usually you have a gateway, which is the main central. You have few sensors, which are connected to the gateway, and they are very simple. Sometimes they say like, I'm still alive, and sometimes say, oh, someone opened the door, okay? And these informations go to a gateway. If you have a connection to the internet or a connection to a provider, this information go to this provider. This provider will do quite some things with it. Maybe see if there is really someone at home, try to call you, for example, or if you have alerts on your phone, you can maybe connect to an app and see what's happening at home. If you have like sensor with a bit more power and bit more connectivity, they can as well connect directly there. Like if you have a smart webcam at home in this alarm system, maybe it can connect directly without going through the gateway. Those kind of things. And IoT architecture in a very simplified way, just look like that. Okay? For the OS and for what you've put on the device, you can put almost anything, it really depends. If it's really simple sensors connected to a gateway, most likely no OS. If it's a gateway, most likely a light OS. That can be any real-time OS, Windows or Linux or even no OS as well. And for the sensor, the same thing. On the cloud side, then you have a lot of providers. Today, I'm from Microsoft, so I will go through many the Microsoft offer with Azure, and you'll see that there are lots of services there. To consume the data, what is important is to be able to connect somewhere and be able to get and have an access to the data and consume it whatever you are using, a browser, an app, PC or whatever. On the Microsoft side, we have two main offers. One is really this cloud side where you have like all those services. We look at few of them today. And on the device side, we have a specific edition of Windows that can run on smart devices. Those who connect directly, not or those where you can do a gateway, for example, not the one without any OS, because Windows is an OS, and even if Windows IoT is a light OS, still it requires quite some resources to work there. On the Azure IoT services, we have quite a lot, and just that's maybe a slide from like 6 months ago. So there are still new ones. I mean, there are new ones coming all the time. I remember the time when, well, that's weird. When we just launched Azure, I was able to, know all the services, almost everything. And now, like, it's every week I receive a mail, with what's new, and I cannot just digest it. So there are a lot of services. Today, we'll look at few of them, like, for example, Event Hub, like some storage, like Stream Analytics, a bit of machine learning, Azure Website a bit we discussed, Power BI, and I think that's about it in the demonstration. But depending on what you want to do for IoT, you may need some other of those services. What is important to keep in mind with Azure is that it's totally open. Okay, anything can connect to Azure on IoT part. It's really super open. I mean, I have no other word, and we are working with a lot of vendors, both hardware and both software, to be able to certify their solution. So you have a couple of logos. Same, the screen capture is very old, but if you have, I don't know, a platform with Linux, then here it's a bigger board with Linux. Here is the code, here is the certification, and here is how you can connect your data and connect there. In the example of my garden that we'll use later on, I have devices running on Linux, some with some Arduino, some on Windows, okay, and all are connected. And this is the great power of Microsoft and the cloud, is to be extremely open, especially for IoT, and we are working with all those vendors to make it happen. So, if I take this example of my house. So in Paris, I have the chance, close to Paris, in the Paris area, I have the chance to have a house. And I have the chance as well to go on vacation time to time over the summer. And what I had in the past was just terrible. I had like a simple sprinkler system, which I had to program in advance. And I have to pray for the weather to be like the weather prediction. Everyone knows that it never happens. So when I came back, my house always looks like a swamp. So I've used too much water, it cost me too much money. Or the prediction says like it's going to rain. But I did not really predict that it will not rain, and it rained and not rain, and then it was a desert, and it was just terrible. So at some point I said it was like 4 years ago or 5 years ago, I said I already have quite some things at my disposal. Let's do something smart. And I had like a couple of sensors, like Oregon Scientific, like at this time, like some Arduinos and some Netduinos, and of course Water, Azure, and Visual Studio. So I said, like, let's build something. So I built something quite simple at that time. So in 2004, I had a sprinkler system working with Netduino. We'll see that at the end of the presentation. And now I made that evolve as well. And I wanted really to understand how, the temperature, the humidity outside in the garden, if it's raining or not. So I use, this time it's Particle now, it's called Particle.io. It's like an Arduino with a Wi-Fi card, some 430 MHz receivers, emitters, and some Oregon Scientific sensors to be able to measure the temperature and humidity. I connected that to Azure Mobile Services. At this time, it was like a very simple service to use on Azure. It still is. And we did not add the specific Azure IoT offer. So I started all those projects with IoT without having a specific IoT offer. I stored the data in SQL base, I had a website, and I was able to check the data. At this time, I did not have really intelligence. I was myself doing the intelligence and myself connecting to the board, to the sprinkler board, to put manually when I wanted to sprinkle and how much time. I've done a couple of evolutions over time, and in 2017, so a year and now quite close to a year, more than a year ago, actually, I arrived with something much more complex, with much more services, with a gateway, with more sensors. I moved away some of the sensors. We'll see that later on. I made the sprinkler system evolve a bit as well. I've used more Azure services. I used like some recommendation workflow. I've tried to use some machine learning. We'll discuss that later on. And I've changed as well the way the app looks like. I even tried to use Cortana for that. It's working, but it was not really useful for my own scenario. It was just about playing with some of the technologies. Today, I've simplified quite a lot the architecture because there were bricks that I didn't need especially. Still, I have like a lot of sensors, and you'll see all of that. Still, I have the sprinkler, which I made evolve as well. I'm using still the same services as the main entry point, and here I've simplified it a bit. What I've done as well on the client side, I've made like a couple of changes. Now I have a bot, which is one of my main entry points to discuss with the rest of my sprinkler system, because my bot is as well an entry point to discuss with the rest of my house and the rest of the component I may have in my house, not only the garden. And I still have the ability to discuss directly and change directly what's happening in the board. So we will see a bit the evolution of those different architecture, and we will see as well some of those services and how to use them. So the first service, again, like quite some time ago, was very basic, because one of the simple way to post information on Azure was to use Azure Mobile Services. It's been renamed like 2 or 3 times. So I don't really know now how this service is called, but it was like that. And I had like Arduino, yes, I have Atmega and stuff like that. So it looks like that. And I wanted to create my own sensor. So this is the rain and humidity sensor. So I bought a couple of components online to be able to build that. It may look complicated. Those who have done electronic, it's very, very simple. You just have like a processor. The Atmega 328 is really what everyone calls an Arduino. If you want to just have the simple chip, that's enough. This is an emitter. This is the crystal and the 2 capacitors to basically make the clock for the Arduino, and you're good to go. So that was a bit of hardware, not very complicated, and that was about the prototype. So the V1 of the prototype here, and that was what was outside in my garden at this time. And it stayed like that for I don't know, like a few weeks, and then but you know, my ex-wife say like, but is it going to stay there, you know, for quite some time? And I say like, well, maybe no. And then I just move it outside, and so I bought a solar panel, a battery pack, put that all on the terrace, move it a bit further, and that was it. And it worked actually. Quite good for quite some time. I've changed later on this sensor part. The reason is because if you want to do something wireless, which work all the time and send the data when it's winter or when you have the cat of the neighbor going on and just moving the box and stuff like that, it's not really good. The other things I had. Is that I still had a couple of sensors like that, like for quite some time in the garden, but most of those now I put just with electricity. I'm not, you know, an electrical engineer to optimize the consumption and stuff like that, so I say like, okay, let's get rid of that. But still, it's working for some simple one. I still have some simple one doing that. For the development at this time, I use Visual Studio. I mean, I love Visual Studio, so I'm a big Visual Studio fan since the first versions. And you have a couple of complements. One is Visual Micro. It still does exist, and it really does help to put all together when you're doing some Arduino development. You can do it now with VS Code and the Arduino complement as well, and it's working the same way. So it depends what you want and what you want to do. For the reception, for those simple devices outside, and for the other Oregon Scientific sensor I had existing at home, I built that. So it's a particle.io. It's like an Arduino with a Wi-Fi card. It's much before we had the ESP8266, those very cheap chip as well. And here you have the receiver. And because I bought like very cheap one because it was a test, I had a lot of noise. So I had to isolate it. So I use like paper and aluminium. And so I slices like paper and aluminium, and then paper again inside, and then you put that to the ground, and it does isolate very well actually. So you don't need to buy sometimes very expensive components. This one is still like that, so it's still working like that. I just had to update a bit the code like recently because I wanted to post the data as well on one of my gateway room. And rather than posting it to the Azure service, the Azure Mobile Services, put it through a gateway which will post it on Azure IoT Hub. Except that this one has not changed. It's still like that, but the good news is that it's behind the plant at home, so no one sees it. Neither my ex-wife, neither my new wife sees this one, so it's all good for this one. A bit later on, my youngest kid say like, oh, what if we buy a greenhouse and do a bit of gardening? And I say like, yeah. And then I say like, greenhouse, more opportunities to add some devices and try stuff. Yes, let's do it. So that's basically how it looks like. Here, by the way, you can see one of the sensors I had with a solar panel and a battery inside, getting some temperature, humidity, stuff like that in a garden. This one like stayed as well very long time. Unfortunately, it finished in a bad way. You'll have a picture later on. So I decided to change the first wireless sensor for a connected one. So basically, I just added a Raspberry Pi V1. This time running on Linux, and I say like, okay, I will connect Azure IoT Hub. I decided to do it on Mono because I love C# as well, but you can do it with other technologies. I have it running with Node.js later on. For the electronic, I almost haven't changed anything from the previous one. It's just that it's connected with a serial port, and I have like a few more sensors I've added as well. Yeah. And that's about it. So that's how it looks like in the garden. It looked like at this time in a garden, and the information were not posted directly to Azure AT Hub, but through a gateway I have at home. It's a Windows Server one. And you can see the various sensors. So here you have the humidity. Here it's to detect if it's raining. Here it's you have the rain one as well here, and the wind and direction, etc. So that's how it was working. And we'll see later a couple of evolution. So, a lot of things on sensors. I don't want to go too much in details of sensors and the devices. I want to focus a bit of time as well on the cloud, on the infrastructure parts. So, on the V1, and I spent a bit of time here because it shows all the philosophy of Azure and how you can connect devices easily to Azure, whatever they are. So, the Azure Mobile Services, it was really easy to use. It's still very easy to use. The only thing you need is an IP stack. You need sockets. You can be in a very slow network and it will just work. Everyone has done some HTTP in his life. Yeah, very familiar with that. So it's just text you send. You have a HTTP, a full request here on the left side. To do anything like with a table, with the Azure Mobile Services, you have to post on a specific table. You give your key, you give the service you want to use, the length of the data, and the data in JSON, and in return you get an answer from the server. All Azure is about that. It's REST API at minima. Then for IoT, we support other kind of protocol, but at minima, you have those kind of things you can do. Which means you have any device with an IP address and the capacity to do some HTTPS or to connect in some secure way, because all the services need to be secure. I will discuss that later on. You're good to go. Which means Linux, Windows, your own OS, whatever. If you can do that, you're good to go. Okay, and you're good to post any information. That's the basic stuff. On Arduino, a bit of code. It's very straightforward, very easy. The only thing you need is having an Arduino connected. So either you use an ESP8266, either you use a particle, either you use whatever with an IP connection. You have a client. This is the IP address for the server. And then to send the data, you connect. Port 80 is not a good idea. You better have to connect using HTTPS. But here it was device was very too low for that. You just do what I've described in the previous slide. And you create the JSON. Here, you create the JSON manually because you're very lazy and you have very few memory and you don't want to use all those libraries for that. But for the example, it makes it. And then you send your data, you're good to go. That's it. Okay? If you want to use Azure IoT Hub, if you want to use any other service, if you want to use like many different services on Azure, the minimum way is this way. So, quite simple. After you can have your packages, whatever language you are using, they make your life easier, they help you for security, authentication, whatever, store your keys, blah, boom. But at the end of the day, and that's the reason why it's so easy to connect with anything. So security, I said I will discuss about security, I will discuss it now, but I can discuss it like for a very long time. It's very important. From the device up to the end. From securing physically the device, securing the communication between the device to the cloud, in the cloud, the storage, how you consume the data, if you have people involved on taking some insights, what kind of data they can access, and as at some point you may want to have an impact back, same stuff, how do I secure the data back to the device? What is interesting, for example, regarding the sensors, those wireless sensors from Oregon Scientific, is that they are quite whole and there is no security. You can just sniff. The protocol is not scripted at all, and you get all the information. I mean, they are still selling those kind of devices to be able to control some plugs in your home. Clearly, you can, if you know like your neighbor had those kind of things, because it's not protected, there is not even an address, it's all known, you can control anything. Okay, if someone really want to change my data, they will have to write like the same device, same frequency, whatever. This is just my garden, it's close range, the risk is quite low, still. Okay, that's very important. And in the example, I've used the port 80. It's just HTTP, just use HTTPS. The reason I did it is just because at this time, my particular TIO had not the capacity to connect to HTTPS. Now they have with the new ones, etc. So it's very simple to do all of that. With the new offer with Azure IoT Hub, I'll discuss that a bit later on. We have the capacity to have even certificates, to be able to pre-provision the certificate in a device, to enroll them, to de-enroll them, to really manage those kind of things. So, but you have to take it since the beginning. In the V1 as well, I don't know if I discuss that later on or not. On the website, I had no login, no password, because I just wanted to have it just at home, just for me. And then I started to use it in demo. But because I haven't implemented any login and password at the beginning, implementing it after, it's quite painful. So I just basically stopped using, one of the reasons I stopped using the website is because I was too lazy to implement the security fully, and it was easier to rebuild one than introducing the security. And it's all like that. And on IoT, because you have tons of things involved, security has to be like top of mind all the time. Every time you do something, what about the security? Is it secured or not? If not, then redesign. And yeah, some of the stuff, if it's really close, if it's really here, like in this room, and you have a physical access here, and your devices can just get that much, spoof or whatever, then it's okay. But then use a gateway in a secured way to connect with the rest of the world. I've used the services which does exist still and which are the ones you can use still to be able to handle the communications and to be able to process all the information and post later on. That's Azure Event Hub. The idea is really to be like a big buffer, like you have, and that's what Azure IoT Hub is using as well. You have like millions of connections at the same time, then you have like a bit less, then you have like a bit more, and the idea is to be able to make sure that you process everything. So that's one of the core parts. If you have few devices, they send information time to time, it's okay, you have other way to handle it. But when you're speaking usually about IoT, usually speaking about like many devices that can be in many different places. And again, you can connect with almost anything. It's using AMQP, HTTPS, MQTT as well, any of the protocol you want. And if you don't have, you can always like have a gateway translating it to one of the known protocol there. Azure IoT Hub is what I've used then what I'm using for the current version, which use some of the previous services as well. That's really packaged. So if you want to go on Azure with all the services, you have 103 for Internet of Things, where you have the main services and you can find Azure IoT Hub. This is where you can create an entry. You even have a free tier limited to a couple of thousand messages per day. And few devices, so that's large enough if like I've done at home. That's largely large enough for a connected house, or if you want to do development, that's largely enough as well to be able to start working on. For a limited project, it's perfectly fine. Then I've done a couple of updates on the devices. One of the recent updates is I've changed the Raspberry Pi, the Raspberry Pi 1 for a Raspberry Pi 2. I make that here. Up. For Raspberry Pi 2, and the reason is because of this little cable I've added on top. It's a webcam. Because I say, like, why not taking picture of what is inside the greenhouse? Why not? And I really wanted to test something else as well in terms of technology. I wanted to use Node.js to post on Azure IoT Hub. So I said, like, yeah, let's use that. And it was used, and you had like a lot of ants there and a couple of animals and stuff, and it started to be quite dirty inside. So here I've used Azure IoT Hub, and in Azure IoT Hub, on top of receiving the information, you can have messages exchanged between the device and the cloud, which means you can send order to the device, messages, okay? And that's what I've used, and I will explain you how it works then for taking pictures. So I have an application to be able to send the messages. Either you write your own application. It's not either. Usually you will write your own application with your own business logic. In my case, for example, it's a bot, which will do that, and it will send then a specific message to Azure IoT Hub. This message will be processed. So basically, you have like the device ID and the message that you are sending. You say, oh, that's for this device. So it will actually not really send it. The device will pull it from the Azure IoT Hub with a long pull. Here, I wrote a Node.js application to process the message. It will say, picture. Then it will take a picture with the webcam. It will upload the picture to Azure Blob Storage, and it will send back the picture, the acknowledgement of the message to the Azure IoT Hub message, and then it will send that back to the application. So if there is any issue, the application can know that, there has been any issue. Sorry, the message has not been processed. On top, you can use Azure IoT Hub to send data. In this part, I was not doing it because I was already doing it in parallel. My architecture is not the best one, but it's just because sometimes I want to add more technology to test new things. But in a normal way, here, because I have as well the sensors, etc. connected, I would send all those data here, and then I can process it, I can store it, and I can do whatever I want in there. Something to notice as well is I say, like, Azure is very open. We support a lot of platform languages, but we do as well create SDK for most of those platforms. And all those SDKs, they're on GitHub, and they are welcome as well for participation, for community participation. So you'll find all the Azure IoT Hub on GitHub, and all the source and everything, and you can even participate. That's for the webcam. That's how it looks like. All the code to do that is available on my GitHub. I have put the reference at the end, and this is how it looks like. So if I had to do a demo, I would have done the demo, but yeah, it's just simple webcam, the cable, you see the box, and this is how it looks like. If you want to type the URL, it's really working. I just asked a picture like right before. I can click actually. Right before coming in, I will see if it's working. Finger crossed. And it was then it's today at 5 local time, 5:13 local time in Paris. So it's like 6 here. Okay, there is 1 hour difference. And that's just how it looked like, okay, in the greenhouse. So it's not the full demo, but actually that gives you an idea on how it looks like. So it's really working. Later on, I can do the demo with the bot for those who are in the room. In the V3, because I wanted to use even more technologies, I added a few more sensors in this poor box, which start to be quite filled. So I added an ESP 8266 Same stuff always, like temperature, humidity, soil humidity sensors. So it's small Wi-Fi module like that. Same thing connected to Azure IoT hub, and same thing I can with the boat, etc. ask for that. So that's just something on top to have like the full panel of technologies. Same thing, I think the source are published on my GitHub as well. The most complicated part is really not the connection to the cloud. The most complicated part is the time you do to soil all those stuff, to take the cable out, to make sure that it's really working, to flash the device. This is where you need the most time, basically. So what to do with the data? What the interest of IoT and the reason why it does transform the business as well is because you can generate now a lot of data that you can store and you can process, you can do stuff with that. Well, I'll move like that. One easy way to consume data is Excel. You can connect actually to the database very easily. I use that for the prototype phase. Great tool for prototyping. You get your data, you connect directly to the table in Azure. You can make graphs, you can see if the things are working. Obviously here something was not really working at this time in my electronic, etc. So I use Excel. It was quite cool. Now I have too much data, so I'm not using Excel anymore. We'll see what I'm using later on. I spoke a bit about the website I did at the beginning. So this one is not working anymore. But it did allow, me to be able to see graph. I'm not sure I have the graph. No, but I had graphs. Okay, I did escape, but I'm quite sure I have that somewhere here. Where is it? Here, and hide. Yeah, to be able to display graph and stuff like that, play a bit with the data, and for me to get some insight of what happened in my garden, okay, in a very simple way. One of the way, and that was where to display the data. One of the way as well is to be able to already transform the data and process the data when they do arrive. And for that, there is a service which is called Azure Stream Analytics, and you can do a lot of things with that. For example, you can pre-process the data. So if you have rules like if the temperature is lower than 50 degrees because it can never happen, or higher than 100 degrees because it can never happen, just remove those elements, don't store them. If you want to do like time averages, like you do a time average of 5 minutes of the temperature and the humidity, and you just post those data and not the raw data because they can vary a lot. Okay? Or if you want to do those kind of things, it's really used for that. The interest as well is that it does scale very, very much. And you can really use that for those kind of things. The interest as well is that you can have multiple output as well. Is that you can store, for example, in some SQL table, but you can output for a website, like a stream, that you can consume in another application. The language used is it's kind of SQL language. It's actually the real request I'm using. I'm using one of these services for that. It's still running for some of the sensors. They are still going there directly. And what is interesting as well, and that's the case for all the Azure services, so I'm just presenting it, is that you have monitoring data for all the Azure services. So for example here, this one stuff, it means there are errors. Okay, I can see it on the graph, but it's better if I write an application, management application, which will check if I have errors or not. And if I have errors on the data coming and it's very regular, for example, I can send a mail to an operator, or I can take some decision. Like if it's always coming from the same device, I can say like, okay, I'll switch off this device. So I will send message to Azure AT Hub or whatever, or I just get it totally out of there. At the same time, I will send a mail to one operator that he will go physically and change the device. Do those kind of scenarios. Okay? And that's where it starts to be interesting. For me, I'm not sending myself a mail every time I have an error because I know that I have errors. I'm not really processing them, but it's just because I'm a lazy developer and it's just my garden. Otherwise, I would do that. And again, here I show it just with Stream Analytics because I had errors and it really helped me to solve them. So I did the screen capture there, but it's working for all the services. So you can monitor that. For the V2, I changed the website. I did something more sexy. I use other kind of technology. Then I use a web app and JavaScript, and I use like technology called Cordova. I did that this time with authentication because when it's done at the beginning, it's better. And and a bit more intelligence, like here, this little box like auto sprinkle, like take some decision and sprinkle for me. But I did not really use it for very long time. I really preferred then to move to a bot. I built API as well in a V2, and I still have a couple of API. The reason is mainly to be able to use more easily and with more digested data from the outside. Like for example here, there is a forecast. So I was using like some Yahoo services. You can use Bing, you can use whatever you want, Google or whatever, to get some forecast data. And those forecast data were the one I was displaying in the app. Okay, I've reused some of this principle for the sprinkler later on. But the interest is that then when you are using those API, you expose them to Azure. It makes it very easy as well to consume from a web page, for example, or from a bot, from C#, from whatever you want. Okay, because you just basically can have it in JavaScript. Still, a few things to keep in mind when you expose those kind of things. And when you do those kind of things, wherever you will store your keys in a JavaScript, they will be visible. Okay? Wherever. Huh? So here, if you access to this API, information that goes to this API must be something public, not something you really want to keep for you. Otherwise, you have to manage authentication, which is possible as well, huh? With API, but not really this way. Again, keep security in mind whenever you design stuff. Some shortcuts may not be shortcuts actually. Huh? Let's move a bit on a couple of more insight parts. So when you go from the device to the cloud, then you move to some analytics. It's good to take like some insights, so to have a human or not, playing a bit with the data, understanding what you need to do, and this is where it starts to be interesting. So, like 2 years ago, I said like, oh, I have like 2 years of data of my garden. What if I use some machine learning technologies to predict? And this is at this time, we just had like announced like 6 months before or a year before the all our machine learning offer in Azure, and I said like, well, let's go. So I use a bit of time for that. I create actually a real model. So this is really the real model, 2015. So it's not new. From the data, and the idea was to be able to predict when to sprinkle or not. And here, a few things. I never recorded when I was sprinkling. I never kept this data. Yeah, you'll see now. I will explain. So I never kept this data. So I said like, if I want to know when to sprinkle, I better have to know when I was and then what was the consequence. So I say like, okay, let's think. I have all the actuals of all the what happened with the weather. So I can get when it was raining, and I have the sensors which tells me, I mean the sensors I have in the ground if the humidity has increased or not. So I say like, okay, so if it has been raining and the humidity increased, then I can say that I was not sprinkling. Kind of. And if it was not raining but the humidity level increased, I was sprinkling. Okay. So I use those kind of data to kind of recreate the missing data. Still, the quality of my data were far too clean. And when I was running the model, I get most of the time between like 45, let's say, and 55% of prediction that I need to sprinkle or not. So not really working. But what I've learned is that the data are critical. So you really need to have someone who is data-minded when you are in IoT project, because if you miss one data or if you transfer one data not the correct way since the beginning on the device, it will be hard to change it when you're at the end. So if you involve the people who will then use the data at the end of the project, it's far too late. It's at the beginning when you design what you want to capture, how you want to transform the data, how you want to store them, that's not really the matter, but then how you want to consume them and what you want to do with the data is important. So data scientists, if you are a developer, are your best friend in this situation, because they're the only one who would be able to prevent that. And if I had a data mind, which is not my case, or a data person with me, I would have been able to make those kind of model working perfectly. Yes, just not that working perfectly. As a developer, to consume services coming from machine learning in Azure, it's very, very easy. It's just extremely easy. It's a web service, you call it, you put your input data, and it gives you the output data, and you're good to go. So that's really the beauty of it. So I did not use that at the end of the day because the prediction was not very good. One of the reasons as well is the sensors in the ground, the soil sensors. You have to change them quite often because they get oxidated, and with the oxidation, then the data they gave you is not the same. That's something I can correct over time. But you know, it's just my home. So I say like, okay, good enough for that, and I will leave it. What I'm using is Power BI, for example, to be able to have like a representation of what's happening. So here it's from December 2017 to current date, and that's all the temperature and temperature sensors that I have in my house distributed, okay, in the various places or in the garden. Few things, they are not perfect. You can see it quickly. You can see like some drops and some stuff like that. Like for example here, like some sensors which disappear and disappear because, as I said, the one I've designed at the beginning, like taking what's happening in the air, sometimes the validation, I mean the way the protocol is, validate the data which should not ever been validated, okay? And I'm not cleaning it in my code, I'm not cleaning it in Azure, I'm not doing this cleaning there. Like for example, this data, where is the mouse? Here, most likely is not valid. Okay, a human can see that. The one at minus 35 degrees, that was in my terrace. Clearly, it was not minus 35 degrees in Paris. It can happen here. I'm living in Moscow, I can tell you it can happen in Moscow as well, but in Paris, no, and not for like one measurement. So those representation, when you have those data, shows my previous points. Work with the data analyst, make sure you clean the data, make sure you do things like that, so that if someone wants to consume the data in some way, it's clean. But using those technology like Power BI, it's like very straightforward, very easy to have those kind of graph. I would have done a demo on the other machine, but I'm happy to have just this graph because it's quite enough. The other thing as well is that sometimes some of the devices turns off, so some of the data are like kind of not provided. That's one of the reasons I had like some Wi-Fi issue at home with one of the box, and well, they were not connected at this time. I said that in my last version I'm using a bot to be able to access to my garden and to the data. I can do a demo later on for those who are in this room. We have as well a full offer called Bot Framework, Microsoft Bot Framework. It's as well bought in Azure. The interest is that you can connect your bot with many channels. So my own personal bot, I've connected with Telegram, Skype, and mail. So I can send a mail to my bot, it will answer. I can have a discussion in Skype and in Telegram, for example. And there are more channels available. And it's like I can have a natural language question. So I can ask like, what is the temperature home? What is the temperature in my greenhouse? So I'm using as well advanced services. It's fully REST API. And what I liked as well with that is that what I don't like with website is that you have to build a UI. I hate that. Okay, here it's quite straightforward. The way it's working, for example, with an email, I can send an email to the bot framework. The bot framework will handle it, will then call my own bot. My own bot will call what we have is the language understanding intelligence services. That's the natural language recognition I'm using. Will call back my code and say like, oh, I think he wants temperature and what he wants as well in this location. My code will handle that. Oh, in this example, it's to get a picture, but it's working the same way. I want a picture of the greenhouse. Then it will send the message to Azure AT Hub. You've seen what happened before with the picture. I'll get the confirmation. I can even get a mail back. I'm using email, but you replace email by Telegram, or you move email by Skype, and it's working exactly the same way. Demo available after the session. And I've not only integrated the camera, but I've integrated like lots of things I have at home, and it makes it very, very easy for me then to be able to have an interaction very quickly, get information. And yes, finally you post the picture. Here is actually a real example of what can happen. That's one in Skype. All my bot is in English because I do tons of demos. Still, if I want, I can use it in French as well. I can take advantage of some of the platform doing some translation. If you ask me like a year and a half ago if it was working well, I would say like, yeah, somehow. But now, for some of the main languages, like you have like French, English, German, even now Czech, for example, it's working extremely well. I was extremely surprised. I'm not sure Ukrainian will be very soon. Even if you are speaking Russian, I'm not sure Russian will be. I'm sure Russian will be quite soon. But the more it goes, the more it's surprisingly working well. In a translation still, but recently I translated one full documentation in Czech in English, from Czech to English, from one of my guys. It's actually I give tomorrow a workshop on bots, and I wanted to reuse what he has done, and I've used a Bing Translator for that. I was extremely surprised. It's working extremely well. He was very surprised as well that it worked that well on his writing in Czech. And on Insight as well, a few more. Yeah, I'll discuss that later. So the sprinkler system itself, this one I have it for more than 4 years. It was even before I added all the sensors. So like 6-7 years ago. 6 or 7, something like that. We had at this time some Arduinos and some boards like that, which were similar, but running .NET Macro Framework. It was, I mean, they are still existing. Huh? It's NetDuino, and I then what I wanted to do is basically being able to access remotely through a web page and then create some programs, and that was about it. So I used an automate because one of my friends gave me an automate and programmed it for me, which just open as an open collector. So basically, if you need to sprinkler, you just give one in one of the entry. It does then close the. It's like a relay. Close the relay, and then it does open the valve. So something very simple. I created a V2 as well. This time with a Raspberry Pi, and because I had no Windows IoT devices in my garden, I said like this one, because it was .NET Framework, I will migrate it to a Windows IoT Core. Well, I realized that not all .NET are exactly the same. So when you want to port something, it's not that straightforward. Still, it was much easier than doing any other redevelopment. And it worked. And by the way, the code for all the sprinkler is available on my GitHub as well. And here in the V3, I get rid of the automates. One of the reasons is I needed five different sprinkler at the end, and it only had 4 entries. So this is how it looked like now. So I replaced it with relay. It's working exactly the same way. I've added a couple of more services like the forecast. I say like, why not put directly the forecast in the device, put a bit more intelligence in the device. So that's what I've done. And so even if, for example, it just needs to get the forecast from the outside. So usually the connection to go outside is working at home. Sometimes it's more complicated to enter because of the provider, the internet provider had issues like that. And actually I have an autonomous mode where it can take its own decision and decide to sprinkler. I give rules, but then it can be fully autonomous. And that was the last update I did for the V3. And you'll find this code as well on my GitHub. In a garden, what I have is what is in the middle here. I have basically 24 volt electro valves. So you give 24 volts, it does open, and then you have the water going on. Okay, so it's very easy. Those cables, those 2 cables, they are directly back then to the relay you've seen on the previous slide, and some little sprinkler here. Because I live as well in Moscow, I live in both cities, Paris and Moscow. Here I don't have that big garden, but I have what people call like a French balcony or something like that, where I can put a micro garden. And of course, I have the same devices that you can recognize here. So I have like a Raspberry Pi, same code, same things. It's just a different location, and I just have one pump. It's a small pump here, like it's $3 pump, but it's large enough for the size of the balcony. I have as well an ESP8266, which I'm using as well for temperature and stuff like that. It's just to have more sensors, and that's the reason why as well on the previous picture you see like quite a lot of sensors. So and same, I can access it with the boat. Okay, I just have to give the location, and I can see the programs. I can change the program. I can create new programs directly in there with the boat. I can get the temperature as well, and all those information. I can access directly those sprinkler, and I have web page. So this is the one I have in Paris because I have five valves. Of course, in Moscow I just have one. The forecast, and I have a page for the forecast, and then I have a recommendation workflow inside, just giving me if I want to do it or not. And of course, I have an automatic mode where I can set up. The automation mode is set, so then it's like you go on vacation, and I pray for my system to work perfectly. And I'm making involvement on this system because some of the data I got over the summer and the prediction were not correct. The actual were not correct, and I sprinkled a bit more than I was supposed to. If it does really work, yes, it does really work. I got tons of peaches, I got grapes, I got marvelous vegetables and so on for the last years. Of course, it's working and it's working perfectly. And it does really work. I mean, just it's no kidding. It does really work. And now I've got quite stable version. All what I'm adding is more to get more things for the demo as well, to show some real codes when we need to dig into real codes. But sometimes, bad things happen. That's one of the sensors which work wireless in a garden. It's as well. It's in old particle.io, same things, just few temperature, humidity. And just at some point, it was like a tempest. It moved, and then someone. And trust me, it's not working anymore when it's in this condition. Life, of a garden. So, yeah, it just died. I have tons of next step, okay, for the project, but really tons of next step. I want to do like a lot of things. Add more intelligence locally as well. We have announced like Azure IoT Edge, which does allow to do like a lot of pre-processing on a gateway, exactly like you'll do on Azure Event Hub. I never wanted to do like too much things in Azure Event Hub because I never had the time to do it, let's put it like that. But that gives me now the envy to really do it and move some of the pre-processing, cleaning up the data and stuff like that, to avoid the kind of heretic stuff that you've seen, and put that then in a gateway. I have few more sensors like UV sensors and few other sensors like that. I have few sensors for the light, so I can measure, if it's dark or if it's clear, if it's day or if it's night. But like the UV for the summer can be good, so that I can send myself like alert if it's like a lot of UV during the day, and I can send to myself an alert like, oh, don't forget to put your solar cream before going outside. It did not really happen this summer. It was crap summer, but anyway. I have as well other elements in my house, not just in the garden, so integrate the garden better with the rest of the elements, like the heating system, for example, and stuff like that. And yes, the security, efficiency. But what I really like with this project is to have fun, to learn. You've seen I'm using like tons of various technologies. The idea is clearly to learn and then to show concretely how things are working. Because sometimes, you're from Microsoft, say, yeah, you can connect with Linux. Okay, yeah, I have like few Linux boxes. Can say, yeah, you can connect with this thing. Yeah, I have that. Yeah, I have that as well. Yeah, we can look at the code. Yeah, it's really working. Yeah, okay, good. And then everyone say like, okay, it's good. So that's the reason why I like to have those technologies. I say a lot of good stuff about Azure, and I've pronounced the word like thousands of times. But we are as well leader not only to connect, but in terms of compliance with many rules and many regulations. It's a list. It does evolve. The slide is like maybe 6 months old or 9 months old, so I guess like we can add a couple of more. But if you look at the compliance with governments of any continent, we are really the platform with the most compliant certification, audit. So you can really trust Azure. That's bottom line. It's really about that. Especially when you are in a project where you have a lot of data, you want to store them. They may be coming from various continents or various governments, so it's very important. At the beginning, I've shown a couple of logos of names of some of the competitors that may have other offers, and they have, some are competitive with some of the elements. Now the question you have to ask to yourself when it goes to really go there is that do they have exactly the same experience? Can you really connect with all those things? Do they really scale? Are they very open or not? That's key question. will they accelerate you for the time to market? Is it easy? Are they providing the SDK and all that or not? And are they complete? Yes, they may have elements, but if you have to take like few elements from there, few elements for there, few elements for there, few elements for them, and then make them work together, you lose a lot of time. And honestly, Microsoft here is really, I think, the only one delivering all across the board with all the possible connection. One more thing. Remember at the beginning, I told you I'm a big fan of wine. Not only because I'm French, but I really love wine. And and at some point, I said, like, why not create the Internet of Wine? Okay, that's actually my real basement. That's actually approximately the number of bottles I have. We can ask my boat, by the way, how many bottles I have. We'll see that later on and why. And I said to myself, at some days, I said, like, I cannot manage my basement and my wine anymore like that. No more. When you have like 400 or 500 bottles and you are taking a bottle, you are scratching a paper, you just don't even know how much wine you have left. Okay? So it was just terrible and the inventory was just terrible all the time. So I remember it was the 26th of December. I said, like, never again. I will use QR code, I will use the phone, and I will use an Azure website with a database for that. It's actually real QR code, you can scan them. This time there is security inside. Okay, so how does it work? But it worked quite simply. It took me 1 day to write the full code, 1 day. I did a blog post, so this code is not available in my GitHub. It was much before, so I was using a blog, but still it's fully available. And it took me 1 day to write the blog post and to correct a few of the bugs when I started to do the inventory. So basically, it's an Azure web app, simple Azure web app, ASP.NET MVC Entity Framework. I have a SQL Server database where I store all the data information. So I have, of course, the list of the bottle, but all the history as well. So who has took which bottle out? When I say like took the bottle out, it's just basically scan the QR code. Okay, and when you scan the QR code, everything is secured, login password. Because I'm doing quite a lot of demos, again, you can read the full bottles that I have and I have the details, but you cannot add, remove, or you cannot edit them, of course. Okay, it will ask for the login password. But you can check, you can scan, it's working. The website takes like about 10-15 seconds to wake up because using free hosting on Azure, I don't want to pay for the service all the time. I don't need the website to be all the time on, and I'm patient enough to wait for 10-15 seconds when I take the bottle. There are a few cool features, like if it's a bottle I've decided to keep for like 5 years, and if I scan it, and if it's not the 5 years already, it's just like, are you sure you want to drink it? You say like you want to take it, keep it for 5 years. Okay? And that's something you don't have on the paper. I mean, you can have the column, but usually you don't read it. Here, it's really explicit. And I'm generating those QR code directly. So it's basically it's just a URL. It's a URL, and it's unique for a specific type of wine. So if I have 20 times this bottle, I copy this QR code and the number I have a Word template, so I copy it 20 times, and these Word templates are printed then on sticker pages. Then I take the sticker and I stick it on the bottle. Okay, for those who have very, very, very good eyes, those ones, for example, here and here and here and here, those are the stickers. This is after the inventory. So I really put the stickers there. The only thing my users, which is not only myself, have to do is basically scan it. If I invite my mother home, asking her to scan and do everything is too complicated. So I say like, look, you can take anything, and actually she's coming tomorrow home because I'll still be here and she needs to take care of my kids. I say like, just write this number on a paper. I know it's not as good at scanning, and later on I will just remove it from my inventory. Still, it's better, okay? Or I can ask one of my kids to scan it for the reporting. I'm using I'm using Excel for that. And that's, you can do like kind of BI as well. It's like simple BI with Excel here. You can analyze, what you are doing, and you can take maybe actions about that. Does not mean that I'm alone when I'm drinking, but you can see like a pattern. Like on weekends, it's usually more bottles than on a week. The other pattern you can see is like usually after weekend you have like 1 day or 2 days where I don't drink bottle. That can be two things: leftover or hangover. Okay, so that's about it. And again, this is all connected through the boat, so I can ask to the boat. Because on my basement I have as well air conditioning, so that the temperature keeps to 14. I want to be able to measure that. So I've as well have an ESP8266 here, temperature and humidity sensor inside and outside. And here the climatization is generating water over the summer, especially. So I have a sensor here which then will alert me if there is if the water level reach here, that I have to empty it. Again, that's accessible through the boat. I can get those data very easily. So I can put, by the way, an alarm if the temperature gets higher to a certain level inside, which I haven't done. It's a good idea to add to my to-do list. I'm just thinking of that because I have the alert for the water, but not for that. So, by the way, is it an Internet of Things environment that I've built with this Internet of Wine? I gave you a definition at the beginning of Internet of Things. So, is it an Internet of Things, this Internet of Wine? Yes or no?
There is interaction there.
There is
Probably no.
probably no. Why not probably no?
Because it's not like the bottle of the wine, it's not the device which sends the information there.
Because the bottle is not a device which sends the information. Okay?
But QR code is the sensor.
The QR code is a sensor information. Yes. Actually, it is an Internet of Things with the definition. The bottle has a sensor. It's the QR code. The only thing it needs is a gateway, which is the phone, to get activated. Okay? So when I will scan, then the data will go to the cloud, will be stored. I'll do some analytics. I can get insights. You've seen the previous Excel file. And of course, it has an impact back on the environment, not the devices themselves, but myself. Okay? Whenever I'm visiting a place where I can buy wine, I can always check if I have one bottle missing or if I had some of this wine or information like that. So I can take the decision and I can then have an impact to buy or not, so to add or not some devices. Some bottle of wines. Okay? So yes, it's like that. But the principle is very, very similar. An IoT project can be quickly complicated, okay, with a lot of technologies involved. Okay, on the sensor side, I have like a lot of them, but still, you've seen that you have the devices, you have to have the devices connecting, you have to have some connectivity, you have to process data, you have to store the data, you have to consume the data, you have to do something with the data, and all of that are basically slices of the project. Plus, you have to have extremely good data, plus you have to have like security layer, plus you have to have some maintenance, because going physically to change the devices, you have to take that in consideration. So that can be quite complex very quickly. But we really, as Microsoft, give you all what we can to make it as simple as possible in terms of coding and operating it. And in the project, most of the issue I had were, none of the issue I had, I should say, were with the cloud and all this part. It was always with device, always with the hardware part, always with the sensors. Not about posting the data, not about analyzing, not about transforming. transforming them. It was more really about the rest. As I said, most of the source code are available either on my blog for the oldest one, either on the GitHub for the newest one. And I'm updating regularly the sprinkler system. I will post an update before the summer. I want to change slightly the way the decision is done to include a few more information. Two ways to start if you're interested in the Windows 10 IoT parts, so the device parts, Windows on devices. Quickly you'll be as well connected to the second one, which is azure.microsoft.com, where you can start your journey if you want to create anything connected to Azure. And then IoT, and then you have the docs as well. It's really where you can get everything. So I've tried to make it in the middle between the hour and a half, so hour 15. We still have time for a question. I don't know if we can take question from the audience online, but if there are questions, so we can have that. I'll be happy to answer any question in the room or any question from the outside. You can just do like that.
Yeah.
So the question is for the security on my basement. I can have the fingerprint, and for the bottle of wine, yes, the scan of
QR code.
the QR code. Yes. So yes, I can have that. It's a bit overdone. I mean, if one of the kids or if in the inventory something disappear, and that's about it. It's never perfect. None of the inventory is never perfect. So I know that it's not perfect. I know that there've been mistakes. I know that sometimes maybe I've scanned 2 times the same bottle. That can happen. So I will see something -1 at the end on the inventory. Strange. But that's okay at some point. If I forget to scan one, then I will have one at some point, and I will figure it out the day I will do like a full inventory. In terms of inventory, I haven't done any inventory since I have that. I mean a full one. I only just add bottles because I did not really feel that I have a lot of issue. Most likely I will have to do it at least at some point if I see that I'm searching for a bottle because I have the list, so I can choose what I want and I don't have it. Sometimes I get the question like, why did you use RFID for that?
Smart.
It's a smart question. Huh? So why not RFID? Anyone has an ID, why not RFID? And why just...
I thought that RFID is already outdated.
RFID is already...
About IoT and other stuff.
Yeah, RFID, I would not say RFID is outdated, but I would say I will ask a simple question. In 20 years, will I be able to read the QR code? In 20 years, will I be able to read the RFID? Who knows? Yes. So the paper, sure. The RFID, maybe. What is the cost of one RFID sticker? Okay, let's say close to $1 or a bit less. Let's say 50 cents. How many bottles do I have in the basement? How many bottles do I drink? What is the cost of a paper and printing it? Done deal. Paper version much better. And the other thing is that even if in 20 years I will not be able to read anymore the paper, I still print the ID of the bottle on it. So manually I can do it. If the technology is changing, I can always redo it much easily than in other ways.
But in your collection you have bottles that are modern, they have already a code. Why
So-
you didn't use existing?
So why I don't use existing QR code? I got this question as well. So if you buy directly to the vendor, to the winery, the bottles, you don't have any QR code. QR code only if barcode. The barcode are only if you are buying that through resellers, and not every reseller.
Another question.
Yes,
about
another question.
Data quality. You mentioned that in your slide from 2015 the data quality was poor. You understand that it was
Yes.
wrong. But what about now?
Okay, what about the data quality and how I did improve? I did improve it a lot, a lot.
Is prediction correct right now when in Sprinkle?
Yes, but I'm not basing it on the sensors. The prediction, I'm mainly basing it on the weather condition, what happened, and the forecast. The reason why is I know how much it's been raining, okay, and I know how much water the plants needs. So and I know if it's going to rain or not, with quite good. Like if they say like 70% chances that it's going to rain, we all know that it's going to rain. Now it's maybe not going to rain like 4 millimeters, it's maybe going to rain 2, but it's going to rain. If it's 50% chances, we all know it's not going to rain. Okay? So I've based my decision engine like that. It's like, is that, I mean, is it already, it has been rain enough or not? And if not, then it is going to rain. Now what I'm adding on the decision engine locally is the temperature. Because if the temperature is 15 degrees, if it's been raining or not, I don't care. I don't need to sprinkle at all if it's less than 10 or 15 degrees. But if it's 30 degrees and it's been raining 1 millimeter every day, it's not enough. I need to add some more water. So it's those kind of smart decisions which I need to do. And I will take multiple sources for the prediction because I've seen that taking only one source has risk because at some point the service was just giving like it's not been raining while it was raining. And so I will use like 2 services and do average or I don't know exactly how I will do that.
Volume of water, you made predictions by average number, and you have grapes and you have peaches.
Yes.
And they have made different.
Yes, this is the reason why I have 5 different sprinkler itself. I mean the electrovalves. I have 5 different zones in the garden.
And you have different
Time. Yes. Well, I have different sprinkling time. Yes, because it will then vary the quantity of water. Like in the greenhouse, I will sprinkle for like 5 minutes, it's largely enough. While outside of the greenhouse, I will sprinkle like for 15 minutes or 20 minutes. And then the other thing I have is the little sprinkle stuff. I can change the size and I can change the tape. So some are just like basically doing like a round of sprinkling and I can adjust. And I plant things which needs like kind of same quantity of water together. I mean, just I'm not mixing. And for the grapes, then it does not need that much water actually, what is interesting. So I don't need to sprinkle that much for this one. And all what is sprinkled around is enough. The humidity going down is just large enough for this one. So I'm managing it like that. Yeah, another question. If I try to use Microsoft
Flow.
Oh, Flow, yes.
More flexibility.
Yeah, yes. Yes, I've used in another project, and I was thinking on how to use it in this condition, like for the alerts, for example. And I think I will do that for the alerts because it's very easy. The only thing is that when I wanted to use it, I wanted to use it with a database trigger, and it was not present yet. Yeah, with new entries in database, but I have other ways to do it. So because I have other things connected at home as well, I have the gateway is taking some of the stuff, so it's part of the list. But yeah, it's quite it's more than quite easy. It's actually very, very easy to use. And yes, yeah, it's yes, absolutely. I've used it in a project where we had it was with the Power Apps. So people were creating things in Power Apps, and then whenever you create like a new entry, people with the name in the Power Apps were notified by an email. And it took me like, I was surprised, like literally you say like straightforward, like 10 minutes. The more complicated one was like, okay, so to send an email, so how exactly is it working? And then it was just working. Yeah, I can add that in my list as well. It's a good one. It's kind of my to-do list, so I just add the new stuff now.
No questions
Okay.
anymore?
Good. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think first of all it was super exciting.